Hey there. Tonight we travel back to the sun-bleached hills of ancient Greece, land of philosophers, politics, and statues that never discovered pants. You've heard the stories. Epic heroes, golden temples, gods on mountaintops. But daily life? That was something else entirely. Because for all its wisdom and glory, ancient Greece gave its people a world of sweat, stone, and struggle. And if you were dropped into it today, you wouldn't last a day. So settle in, get comfortable, and let the past come quietly to meet you. Welcome to ancient Greece, where your day doesn't begin with an alarm clock, but with sunlight punching through wooden shutters and dragging you out of whatever sleep the heat didn't already steal. Your house is made of dried mud bricks that soak in the sun and release it back into your bones like a slow, silent punishment. The air is thick before dawn, and your straw mattress does nothing to help. There's no pillow, just a rolled-up cloak or your own arm, and nothing but the dust-packed floor beneath you. Around you, other bodies shift and grunt and scratch. You all sleep in the same room. No doors, no privacy, no escape. Someone's foot is touching your back. Someone else is snoring through a stuffed nose. The goat, of course, is still asleep in the corner. You try to close your eyes, but the heat presses down harder, like the sun has chosen you personally. The walls don't breathe. They hold the warmth from yesterday like a jealous lover. Even in winter, they trap the cold and shove it into your bones with equal cruelty. But this morning isn't winter. It's summer, and the light spreads quickly across the floor, catching on broken pottery and worn sandals. You scratch your neck. Something bit you in the night. Probably many things. The straw mat smells like mildew and smoke. Your tunic, if you're wearing one, is stuck to your skin in places that feel private. You lift it away and feel immediate regret as the air hits your sweat and makes it worse. You sit up slowly, not because you're tired, but because fast movements wake everyone else, and someone will want something. Water, space, silence. You'll get none of it. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows, but he's late. You've been awake long before him. Your back already hurts. There's no soft place in the house, and the straw only covers so much of the ground. You hear someone arguing quietly, maybe about chores, maybe about nothing, and someone else sighs like they've already lived this day 10 times. You rub your face with one hand and feel the grime of sleep, dust, and yesterday's sweat. There's no running water, no basin, no washroom. Just a cracked jug in the corner that might have enough left to splash your face, if you're lucky. You stretch your legs and feel the floor press back, cool in one spot, already warm in another. The wooden shutter over the window groans in the breeze and then slams shut again. It won't stay open unless you wedge it, but that means letting in flies, or worse. You think about going outside, but then you think about the street, dirt, waste, noise, and decide to wait just a little longer. This is the best part of your day, and you already hate it. You haven't stood up yet. You haven't eaten. You haven't worked. And still, your body aches, your tunic clings, and your stomach knots in the way that says yesterday's bread wasn't enough. There's nothing romantic about this room, this morning, this version of life. There's just heat, dust, breath, and obligation. You scratch another bite on your arm. You breathe through your mouth because the air smells like stale smoke and something that died a week ago in the alley. You glance at the others, still half asleep, still sweating, still pretending they don't have to get up. But they do, and so do you. The day has already started. Ancient Greece doesn't care if you're ready. You step outside barefoot, blinking against the light, and already sweating again. The street is a patchwork of dust, broken stones, and things you don't want to name. You move around a pile of something that used to be food, and try not to think about how close it is to where your neighbors sleep. The air outside isn't any fresher than inside. It's thicker, louder, full of the sound of roosters, goats, shouting, and pottery being dropped. Somewhere nearby, a baby is screaming. Someone else is arguing. The fountain is farther than you want it to be, and you're already carrying an empty clay jar across your shoulder, its rough surface biting into your skin. It's not just heavy, it's fragile. If you drop it, you don't just lose water. You lose a whole week's worth of trouble. Potters don't work for free. Clay doesn't appear by magic. So you walk slowly, carefully, praying to every local god that your grip doesn't slip before you get there. You're not the only one making the trip. Other people are doing the same thing, mostly women and children, though some older men shuffle along if they have no one else at home. Everyone is quiet at this hour. It's too early to complain out loud, and everyone is conserving energy for later. The jars thump gently against backs and hips, all shapes and sizes, all handmade, all breakable. No handles, just friction, fabric, and balance. The path to the fountain cuts through several alleys, each slightly worse than the last. You duck under a low wooden beam, avoid a pile of animal waste, and squeeze past someone throwing out what looks like last night's dinner scraped into a basket of weeds. When you finally see the fountain, it's already surrounded. People waiting, some standing, some sitting on the edge, others just glaring at whoever seems to be taking too long. There's no line, just a slow, silent contest of who can look the most impatient. The water comes from a carved stone spout, dripping steadily into a worn trough that smells of moss and mineral. It isn't clean, it isn't cold, but it's the only water you're getting today. So you hold your breath and step forward when someone else moves aside. The jar is awkward to position. Too low and it hits the rim. Too high and it tips over. You kneel awkwardly, feeling the heat of the stone through your knees, and try to guide the mouth of the jar to the stream. It fills slowly, humming with each breath of liquid. You hear someone sigh behind you, and you don't turn around. You don't want to make eye contact. If you drop it, it's your fault. If you take too long, it's your fault. And if someone jostles you, no one cares. This isn't a place for sympathy. It's a place for water, and you take it when you can, how you can, and then you move. Carefully, quietly, back the same way you came. Now the jar is heavy. Every step home is slower, more cautious. Your arms aching, your back warning you that you're going to feel this for hours. The clay digs into your shoulder, and the strap you tied around it is already sliding. You adjust it, but there's no good way to carry 30 pounds of sloshing liquid without spilling or swearing. You can't stop, though. There's no shade, no pause, and if you trip, you don't get another chance today. Water is for everything. Drinking, washing, cooking, rinsing your hands, maybe even cooling your feet if there's any left by nightfall. You think about that as the sun climbs higher and the streets grow louder. People are moving now, waking up, beginning the same day you're already halfway through. Someone yells at a pig. Someone else kicks a door. Your jar shifts again, and your heart jumps, just for a second. You steady it, mutter a quiet curse, and keep going, because that's all you can do. Keep going. You set the jar down carefully, feeling the weight leave your spine but not the ache. There's no real sink, no basin, no place that makes cleaning yourself feel like anything but a chore. Just a wide clay bowl, a wooden stool if you're lucky, and whatever water you didn't spill on the way home. Bathing, if you can even call it that, isn't a morning ritual. It's damage control. There's no soap, no cloth, no sponge. Only oil, thick, cloudy, and slightly rancid from the heat. You dip your fingers into a small clay pot, smear the olive oil across your arms and chest, and rub it in not for softness or scent, but because it's the only way to lift the grime. Sweat, dust, and skin clump together as you work the oil into every crease. You try not to think about how many times this same oil has been used. Fresh oil is for people with better homes. Yours has been reused, maybe filtered through linen once, maybe not. Once you're coated, you pick up the strigil, a curved metal blade, slightly dull, slightly bent, stained with the past week of half-scraped skin. You draw it across your body slowly, methodically. There's a rhythm to it, but no comfort. The edge scrapes off the oil and dirt in greasy ribbons that cling and slide down your legs. It doesn't cut, not if you're careful, but it doesn't soothe either. It pulls, it tugs. It reminds you where the sunburn is. You work in silence, sometimes glancing up to see if anyone else is watching. They usually are. Because this isn't a private moment. It's a shared one. You clean yourself in front of your siblings, your cousins, your parents. Modesty is a luxury. You turn your back when you can, but that doesn't mean anything. The room is too small, the light too bright, and the silence too familiar. No one comments. No one jokes. It's just part of the day. You scrape your arms, your chest, your legs. You pause at the parts that feel too raw from yesterday's scraping and skip the spots where a fresh bite or scratch makes the metal sting. There's no scent to cover anything. No mint, no flour, no herbs, just oil and body and dust. If there's extra water, you splash a little over yourself at the end, trying to rinse away what the blade didn't catch. It never feels like enough. You still feel coated, still feel sticky, still feel like your skin has a thin film that won't come off. But this is clean. By local standards, this is more than most get. You glance at your feet, dark with dust, and think about wiping them later, maybe before bed. Maybe not. You wipe the blade with the same cloth you use for everything else. It smells like oil, sweat, and metal. You hang it back on the nail beside the door, next to everyone else's. You don't brush your teeth. Not really. There's no toothbrush, no paste. Some people chew twigs, others rinse with vinegar if they're feeling fancy. You might do neither today. You rub your gums with a finger, maybe run a cloth across your tongue, and call it enough. You breathe through your nose and hope you don't smell worse than the next person. Your tunic goes back on, the same one from yesterday and the day before. It hasn't been washed in weeks. Laundry means dragging everything to the river, beating it against rocks, hoping it dries before nightfall. That's a task for another day, maybe another week. You shift the fabric over your shoulders and adjust the belt. The oil still clings to your skin under the cloth, and within minutes, the tunic will cling too. You're not clean, not really. But you're clean enough to move on, clean enough to be seen in the street, clean enough to get back to surviving. The first meal of the day isn't something you look forward to. It's something you do so your stomach stops growling long enough to get other things done. There's no table set, no warm smell drifting from a kitchen, no sense that anyone's excited to eat. Breakfast is quick, quiet, and deeply forgettable. Someone hands you a chunk of barley bread, yesterday's, or maybe the day before's. It's dense, cracked around the edges, and dry enough to make your mouth ache before you've even taken a bite. The name for it is maza, but that sounds more pleasant than it is. It wasn't baked in an oven. It was shaped with wet hands, flattened, and shoved onto hot stones or into ash. You knock a flake of charcoal off the bottom and pretend not to notice the tiny crack where something might have crawled in last night. If you're lucky, the bread is only stale. If you're less lucky, it's already starting to sour. You eat it anyway. There's no water waiting for you. The jar you carried home is still settling, the dust drifting to the bottom. You're not supposed to drink straight from it. Everyone says so. The fountain doesn't run clear, and no one trusts what flows from stone to cup without something added. So instead, you reach for diluted wine, just a little, poured from a clay jug into a chipped bowl. Not enough to feel anything, just enough to make it less dangerous. Children drink it, elders drink it, you drink it. It's not celebration, it's survival. You tip the bowl carefully and chase the dryness in your mouth, knowing the wine isn't hiding anything. Not the heat, not the bitterness, not the taste of the clay. But it's wet, and that's enough. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand and set the bowl down where someone else will probably pick it up next. There might be an olive, if someone remembered to save one. Just one, wrinkled and clinging to its pit. No oil, no cheese, no fruit, unless you live near someone with trees and a surplus, and you probably don't. Eggs are for people with chickens. Honey is for temples or bribes. Fish? Maybe once a week, but not today. Today it's just you, your bread, your wine, and the idea that maybe dinner will be better. No one sits. There's no place to. You lean against the wall, chew slowly, and let the sounds of the street drift in while others around you do the same. Some mutter about chores. Others are already moving. Someone drops a plate. No one reacts. You finish eating without ever really tasting anything. You chew, you swallow, you nod. And that's breakfast. There's no pause afterward. No quiet cup, no full stomach. Just crumbs on your tunic and the grit of ash between your teeth. You lick your finger, dab it against the crust that fell into your bowl, and call that good enough. You look down at your feet, still dusty, still cracked, and think about what's next. There's always something next. The day doesn't wait for your appetite to be satisfied. You're not full. You're just no longer hungry enough to complain. You brush your hands against your tunic, feel the oil from earlier smear slightly, and glance around to make sure no one's staring. No one is. They're busy not being hungry too. You step outside, back into the noise and heat, carrying the same ache in your stomach you woke up with, only now it's quiet. For a while. You pick up your clothing from where it was tossed the night before. It's not folded. It's not clean. It's a rectangle of linen that's been worn too many times and washed too few. There are no fasteners sewn in, no sleeves, no shape. Just fabric, and the hope that it stays where you put it. You wrap it around your body, over one shoulder, under the other, then try to fix it in place with a bronze pin that never feels quite secure. It stabs your thumb once, then again, and you hiss under your breath. The cloth slips when you move too fast. It sags when you bend over. You don't get to complain. This is what everyone wears. A chiton if you're lucky, a himation if you can afford the extra length, and nothing at all if you're under femme or over 80. No belts with buckles, no straps, no layers, just linen and guesswork. There's no underwear. That's not a joke. That's just how it is. You shift your weight, testing the way the fabric falls, trying to remember which side came loose last time. You tie a cord around your waist, more to hold the whole mess together than to make it look neat. Fashion isn't the goal. Avoiding exposure is. The wind outside is unpredictable, and linen isn't heavy. One gust in the wrong direction, and you're offering a full philosophical statement on the human form, whether you want to or not. You pin the shoulder again, tighter this time, and tug at the hem. It's already stained. The edges are frayed. One corner smells like smoke and another like old oil, but that's still better than some. If you're a man, your chiton stops at the knees. If you're a woman, it's longer, harder to walk in, easier to trip over. Either way, it was never designed for comfort or modesty. Sandals, if you have them, are next. Thin leather, dry from the sun, tied with cords that dig into your feet after an hour. You check the straps. One's already loose. The sole on the left one is peeling. You wear them anyway, because going barefoot means burns, blisters, and whatever the market spilled last night. There's no such thing as socks. You pull your foot back into the sandal, adjust the knot, and hope it lasts the day. If you're barefoot, you don't pause to think about it. You just go and try not to look down. The streets are sharp, uneven, littered with pottery shards, goat droppings, and worse. And the sun waits for no one. Already it's crawling down the outer wall, promising that whatever heat you woke up in is only the beginning. You check your pin one last time, press your hand against your belt to make sure the knot is holding, and step outside. You walk like someone who's always slightly afraid of their clothes failing them, because they might. You've seen it happen. The wind catches a corner. A pin snaps. A neighbor gets an eyeful of something no one asked for. Everyone pretends not to notice, but they do. You pull the fabric over your shoulder again, smoother this time, and hope it stays. There's no mirror to check. No change of clothes waiting for you at midday. This is what you've got until the sun goes down. You move carefully, trying not to sweat too much, knowing it won't matter. Within an hour, the linen will be stuck to your back, your thighs, your neck. It will shift, it will sag, and by evening, it will feel like you're peeling it off your skin. But for now, it holds. For now, you're dressed, and that's good enough. You step outside and immediately regret it. The sun is higher now, hanging just over the rooftops, and every surface you touch radiates heat. The stone threshold is warm. The dirt path beyond it is warmer. You feel it through the soles of your sandals, if you're wearing any. And if you're not, then every pebble, thorn, and broken shell becomes a personal attack. The sandals don't help much. The leather is thin, dried out from months of use and stretched to the point where the straps bite your skin at one angle and hang uselessly at another. You tighten one knot, then the other, but they don't stay tight for long. As soon as you take your first steps, the heat from the ground begins to creep in. And by the time you reach the corner of the house, it feels like you're walking across a skillet. The streets aren't paved. Not really. Just paths worn down by repetition, carved out by footsteps, hooves, wheels, and runoff. They twist and narrow between crooked walls, lined with stacked stones, old wood, and the occasional pile of garbage no one had time to move. Everything smells like it's been sitting in the sun too long. Fish, olives, spilled wine, sweat, and whatever died last week and wasn't worth burying. The path is uneven, cluttered with bits of shattered pottery, goat droppings, and patches of something sticky you don't dare identify. People walk quickly, heads down, eyes forward, stepping over, around, and through without slowing down. You try to do the same, but your sandal slips, catches a stone, and sends a jolt of pain up your heel. You don't fall, but it's close. No one stops to ask if you're all right. This is just how mornings begin. You pass animals, dogs without collars, goats without fences, chickens without any sense of direction. And all of them have left something behind for you to step in. A donkey tied to a post sneezes as you walk past, spraying dust and spit across the wall. You hold your breath, quicken your pace, and try not to think about what's now clinging to your leg. There's no drainage, no system, no order. If it rains, the street becomes a river of filth. If it doesn't, the filth just bakes into the surface, layer by layer, until it's part of the road itself. Children run barefoot through it all, their feet coated in dust and worse. You envy their speed, not their hygiene. Your own feet, pressed into sandals that feel more decorative than functional, are already aching. Each step feels like a gamble between balance, luck, and pain tolerance. You reach the market square, or something shaped like one, and the air thickens even more. Smoke from cooking fires, steam from boiling pots, shouts from vendors, clanging pots, and the dull thump of someone chopping something unidentifiable. You keep moving, weaving between carts and bodies, dodging a spilled basket of dates and someone swinging a jug of oil too wide. Your sandal catches again. You fix it with one hand while the other shields your eyes from the sun. There's nowhere clean to step, nowhere safe to pause. The streets here don't welcome you. They challenge you. They dare you to keep walking. So you do. Because you have to. Because there's always somewhere else to go. And because standing still only makes the sandals burn deeper into your feet. If you're a man and a citizen, you don't get to choose whether you're a soldier. You already are one. The city expects it, your father expected it, and the assembly expects it. From your early teens, you've been training, not as a hobby, not as sport, but as duty. Every male citizen is part of the defense, whether he wants it or not. You were taught to hold a spear before you were trusted to speak in public. You stood in formation before you ever voted. The lessons never end. Today, it's drills. Yesterday, it was shield work. Tomorrow, it might be marching until your feet bleed. There's no full-time army here, just people like you. Farmers, traders, craftsmen, all expected to fight when called. And the call always comes. The formation is called the phalanx. Shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield. The idea is that no one breaks and no one thinks for themselves. Your job is to hold the line, push forward, and stay alive. If the man next to you falls, the formation cracks. If you panic, someone behind you gets a spear in the back. That's why training is constant. To make instinct take over where courage fails. The gear is heavy. If you're wealthy, you wear bronze, a breastplate that presses into your ribs, greaves that dig into your shins, a helmet that muffles the world around you until all you can hear is your own breath. If you're poor, it's leather and cloth, maybe a small round shield, maybe nothing but a stick. There's no official standard. You bring what you can afford. You carry your own life into battle, one piece at a time. Even outside of war, you're expected to be ready. There are inspections, public drills, naval assignments. Sometimes you're rowing a trireme with 30 others, shoulder to shoulder, chained to your bench so you don't fall behind. The sea doesn't care that you're a landman. The officer above you doesn't either. The command is shouted, the oar digs deep, and you pull until your hands bleed and your back locks up. Then you keep pulling. Back on land, you clean your weapons yourself. There's no armory, no barracks, no salary unless you're in active campaign. And even then, the pay might not come. The honor is the point, or that's what they tell you. Glory, duty, manhood, all tangled up in the same sweat-soaked uniform that no one gave you and no one will replace if it breaks. You don't question it, not out loud. Even the philosophers served. Socrates fought. So did your uncle, and probably your neighbor. Even the ones who limp now and walk with canes. There's always another border to defend, another rival city to watch, another rumor of rebellion that needs men with shields and long spears. Sparta trains their boys from age 7. Athens waits a little longer, but the end result is the same. You're always a soldier, not just when it's convenient, not just when it's noble. You sleep knowing that tomorrow could bring orders. You eat knowing your arm might have to carry a spear again soon, and you walk the streets knowing that every man around you was trained just like you. Drilled, shouted at, hardened, ready to fight, not because he wants to, but because no one gave him another option. If you're a woman, your world is smaller than a room and quieter than a whisper. You wake up before the men do, not to speak, but to serve. You don't eat with them. You don't walk beside them. You move like a shadow between the kitchen, the loom, and the sleeping mat, careful not to raise your voice or your gaze. The outer door is not yours to open. Your place is the gyneconitis, the women's quarter. And if you're lucky, it has a window, a small one, with a wooden screen or stone lattice that lets in light but not much else. The street beyond it might as well be another country. You watch it sometimes, through the gaps, when no one else is looking. You see sandals, tunics, market baskets, the edge of a shield, the tail of a dog. But the faces are a blur, and yours is never seen. You spend most of the day with other women. Sometimes that's a comfort. Most of the time, it's a reminder. Mothers, daughters, grandmothers, slaves, each with a task, a silence, a rhythm. The air smells of oil, wool, and whatever is cooking over the small clay hearth. You stir the pot. You shape the bread. You mend what's torn. Every day is the same, and that sameness is protection. Boredom is safety. Predictability is peace. You rarely speak unless someone asks you something, and even then, the answer is short. You don't complain. You don't ask questions. You listen to footsteps on the roof tiles, to the crackle of the fire, to the way the pot hisses when it boils over. Those are your signals. That's your outside world. Everything else is duty. If you're unmarried, you wait. If you're married, you obey. If you're a widow, you try to disappear as gently as possible. Your job is to bear children, sons, if the gods are generous, and raise them until they're old enough to walk out the door you cannot. You nurse them, wash them, dress them, teach them not to speak with their mouths full, and then they leave. Your daughters stay, becoming smaller versions of you, practicing how to step quietly, how to cover their heads, how to say very little while doing a great deal. If you get sick, you don't rest. If you're in pain, you don't say so. The other women will notice. They might help. Or they might simply take your tasks until you're able again. There's no privacy, no locks. Even your thoughts begin to whisper eventually, for fear they'll be overheard. And yet, you endure. You sing under your breath while you knead the dough. You laugh, softly, when a child mispronounces a word. You take pleasure in a row of stitches that turn out straighter than expected, in a stew that thickens just right, in the feel of sun-warmed clay against your fingers. You memorize the patterns of light through the window screen and the distant sound of the neighbor's rooster. You learn to read the silence of the house, what it means when it's too quiet or too loud. You press your hand to the wall and feel its coolness, and for a moment, you imagine something outside of it. Then you turn back to the fire, or the thread, or the child crying in the corner, because that's your life. That's the space you're allowed, and you fill it, fully, silently, invisibly. You sit down, but not in the way that means rest or comfort. It's more like a pause between tasks, a small break carved into the day, not because you're invited to dine, but because your body won't keep going without it. The food is already on the table, if you can call it that. A few olives, some barley bread torn into stiff pieces, maybe a smear of cheese if someone brought it back from the market this week. There's no meat. That's rare and expensive, saved for festivals, sacrifices, or guests you want to impress. You don't count as a guest. You barely count as present. There's a jar of watered wine passed around, and you sip it more from habit than desire. It's warm, slightly sour. It settles the dust in your throat, but not the knot in your stomach. If you're a woman, you wait. You don't sit with the men. You don't speak unless spoken to. You hover near the back, serving, pouring, arranging, until the men are finished, or distracted. And only then do you take what's left. Sometimes it's enough. Sometimes it isn't. You don't complain. A girl who complains about hunger is a girl who isn't ready to marry. A wife who complains is one who isn't grateful. So you eat quickly, quietly, standing if there's no seat left. The bread is dry. The olives are sharp and make your jaw ache. The cheese, if there is any, coats your mouth with salt. You chew slowly to make it last. You drink the wine to wash it down, then wipe your fingers on your tunic and return to whatever work hasn't finished itself in your absence. The room doesn't go silent, but it doesn't feel full either. There's always someone leaving, someone coming in, someone asking where the knife went, or who forgot to soak the lentils. Eating isn't an event. It's a brief interruption of motion. The fire still crackles. The loom still creaks. The child still cries in the corner, and someone is still shouting about a broken jar. You chew between distractions. You swallow between commands. And before you've even realized it, the food is gone. Not because you were satisfied, but because your piece was just that small. You think about more, but there isn't more. You think about stealing a second olive, but someone is watching. And so you push back the bowl, lick the salt from your lips, and stand. You're not full. You never are. Fullness is a luxury. Satisfaction is for another class of person, another day, maybe even another lifetime. What you have is just enough not to faint, just enough to keep working, just enough to keep your hands steady and your voice low. You pat your stomach out of habit, not pride. It's still empty, but the ache has softened for now. You move through the rest of the house slower, heavier. There's still a long afternoon ahead. More chores, more errands, More time spent thinking about the next meal, even though you already know what it will be. The same bread, the same wine, maybe one more olive if someone was generous. Hunger isn't an emergency, it's a companion. And by now, you've learned how to live with it. You make your way to the agora, not because you have time, but because this is what's expected. The sun is still high, and the stone beneath your feet is too hot for comfort. You squint against the light, weaving through stalls, beggars, and goats, until the market opens into the wide, dusty square where politics lives and breathes, loudly. There's no official gathering, no guards keeping order, no raised platforms. Just a crowd that shapes itself around the loudest voice in the moment. One man stands, arms wide, talking fast about taxes. Another interrupts, waving a scrap of parchment. A third laughs, too loud and too long, shaking his head like everyone else is a child. You stop near the edge, hands behind your back, and pretend not to listen, though of course you do. Everyone does. That's the point. Sometimes the arguments are about grain or land, sometimes about war, sometimes, less clearly, about virtue or the good or how to live. Those are the days the philosophers show up, bare feet caked with dust, robes slipping off one shoulder, eyes squinting against something no one else can see. They speak slowly, ask questions with no answers, gesture toward nothing in particular. Some people listen, some heckle. Others pretend to understand while nodding solemnly, as if agreement is a kind of protection from confusion. You stand there long enough to catch a few phrases. The just man, the shape of courage, who truly rules who? It sounds wise. It might be, but it doesn't fix the price of barley or the smell of rotting fish. So eventually, the crowd shifts back to arguments it can win. If you speak, you do so carefully. The wrong word can follow you home. You clear your throat, raise your voice. Try to sound confident, even if your sandals are falling apart, and your last meal was more hunger than food. Maybe you argue about grain tariffs. Maybe you ask why the city wall is still crumbling. Maybe you say nothing, just listen, nod, and hope to be remembered as someone who shows up. That matters. Presence is politics. You don't have power unless people see you trying to use it, even if no one agrees with you, even if someone laughs when you speak, even if the philosopher calls your question interesting and then moves on without answering. You stood there. You were counted. That's the currency of a citizen. Eventually, the sun dips and the voices thin. One man storms off, another keeps talking to no one. Someone claps you on the shoulder. Someone else bumps into your elbow without apology. You walk away slowly, the sound of arguments still buzzing in your ears. You didn't change anything. No one did. But something inside you is more awake, stirred maybe by the noise, the movement, the illusion that words still matter. You pass a child asleep under a cart, a dog nosing a fig pit, a merchant packing up with curses and twine. Your feet are sore. Your head is full. You're not sure what was accomplished, but you were there, and that counts. In this city, that counts. They're always there, but rarely seen. Not in the way that people are seen. More like furniture that moves, like shadows that breathe. You wake to a clean hearth and assume it cleaned itself. You dress, and someone's already mended the hem. You drink watered wine, and someone else carried the water and poured it without speaking. These are the ones you don't name in stories. The ones who bring figs and wash children and carry your waste away from the house in baskets. If you're poor, you might only have one, a girl bought young, now grown into silence. If you're wealthier, there might be a few, a cook, a cleaner, a boy who runs errands, a woman who cares for the others. They don't sit at your table. They don't speak first. They don't leave. In the market, they carry everything. Clay pots too large for your arms, baskets of fish that leak down their backs, wood for the fire, stones for the wall, anything someone else doesn't want to touch. No one asks where they sleep. No one asks if they're tired. Their feet are blistered, and their eyes stay low, because to be noticed is to risk more work or worse. They fetch, follow, hold, lift, run. They don't have pay. They don't have a voice. If they're lucky, they don't have bruises that show. Some were born into it. Some were taken in wars you never fought. Some were sold by fathers, by storms, by hunger. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that they stay quiet and keep moving. Even in the Navy, the strongest arms on the oars are slaves. You hear stories about men chained to benches, their backs raw from salt and time, rowing because it's that or the sea. And sometimes, it's still the sea. They aren't citizens. They don't own land. They don't vote. They die without funerals. You pass them every day. You step around them. You hand them things without looking. And when one of them collapses from heat or illness or age, you move away and hope someone else deals with it. Not because you're cruel, but because everyone else does the same. It's just how the world works. A city that builds statues to gods still runs on backs that bow lower than marble ever could. And still, they don't disappear. They're in your kitchen, your street, your bathhouse. One of them knows how to mix herbs that calm a fever. Another one sings to your child when you don't have time. A third knows 3 languages, but says nothing unless asked. You don't call them friends. You don't ask where they're from. You tell yourself that you're better than others. You don't beat, you feed, you let them rest. But deep down you know it wouldn't matter if you didn't. They can't leave. And you can't live without them. Even if you're poor, even if you're barely getting by, even if no one listens to you, someone listens to them even less. And that, more than anything, keeps the whole world turning. The first thing they ask is what color your fluids are. Not how it feels. Not where it started. Just whether it's yellow, red, black, or clear. Because that's how sickness works here. 4 humors, 4 explanations, endless combinations. Too much bile? You're angry. Too much phlegm? You're cold inside. Blood too hot? Better let some out. You sit in the shade, feverish and dizzy, while a man older than your father presses 2 fingers to your wrist and nods like he hears secrets in the pulse. He smells faintly of garlic and sheep wool. Around his waist, pouches filled with powders, dried roots, tiny bones. You want answers. You get murmurs. You want relief. You get instructions. Some wine, less walking, more onions. Maybe bleed a little just in case. If you're lucky, it's only a headache or a sour stomach. Then it's cabbage leaves behind the ears, a hot cloth soaked in goat's milk across the belly, or chewing bitter herbs until your tongue goes numb. If it's worse, a deep wound, a broken limb, a cough that won't stop. Then things become slower, darker, quieter. The healer brings a blade, not prayers. There's no clean room, no stitched sheets, no kind nurse with a gentle smile. Just a wooden bench, a clay bowl of wine, and 2 men to hold you down. No one counts to 3. No one waits for your readiness. Metal enters flesh like it has every right, and you scream until your voice stops working. If the wound doesn't fester, if the bone sets even slightly straight, then the gods must be pleased. If not, well, you tried. There's no such thing as rest. You don't recover in peace. Children still cry. Animals still need feeding. Bread still needs baking, even if your arm is in a sling or your back is leaking something yellow. You wrap the wound, pretend to feel stronger, and keep moving. Some say fig leaves help. Others swear by boiled garlic or powdered snail shells. The remedies contradict each other, but you try them anyway. Not because you believe, but because doing nothing feels like waiting to die. Old women mutter incantations under their breath while smearing ash on your chest. A neighbor hands you a charm carved with symbols you can't read. Someone suggests bathing in seawater under a full moon. You do that too, just in case. The worst part is how normal it feels. No one expects a cure. No one demands healing. Pain is something you live around, not something you solve. The man with a crooked leg still chops wood. The woman with coughing fits still grinds grain. Even the blind man at the market finds his way between stalls, counting steps, tapping stone with a stick. You learn to ignore the sting, the throb, the slow ache that moves like weather through your bones. You don't ask for sympathy. There's none to spare. And when someone dies, they die quietly, at home, in the heat, under the same roof they were born. You light oil, cover the body, and keep the rest of your thoughts to yourself. Because tomorrow, it might be you. And if it is, someone will try the garlic again. You arrive before dawn, because everyone does. The path to the theater is already thick with people, tunics brushing, sandals scraping stone, vendors shouting about honey cakes and watered wine. You pass them all, clutching a reed mat if you're smart, because the seats are stone, long curved rows stacked into the hillside like a bowl of heat and voices. There's no shade, no backrests, no breaks, just sun, sound, and the day ahead. You find a place, wedge in beside someone already sweating, and look down at the stage far below. A flat circle of packed earth, a few painted boards, and soon the gods will walk there. Or kings, or fools, or all three. Everyone squints, coughs, stretches. Then a horn blares, and it's too late to leave. It begins with a chorus. A wall of voices rising in rhythm, robes fluttering, faces painted white. They sing of murder, of fate, of some long war that's already lost. The actors enter in masks larger than their heads, mouths frozen in grief or rage or absurd joy. The words echo across the seats, carried by rhythm, not microphones. You can't catch every line, but you feel the emotion. Like wind bending a tree. Someone near you weeps, someone else laughs too loud at the wrong part. Then comes the comedy, crude, bright, chaotic. A man with a fake phallus trips over his own lines. Someone makes a joke about flatulence and democracy. The crowd roars. You grin, not because it's funny, but because laughter is a relief. After hours of doom, anything light feels holy. But it doesn't stop. There's no curtain, no intermission. One play bleeds into the next. Tragedy into comedy, gods into drunks, kings into fools again. You shift your weight, stretch your legs, sip warm wine from a shared cup, and brace for the next performance. Some people leave quietly to relieve themselves and return just as quietly. Others nap with their eyes open, but most stay alert, not out of politeness, but because this is civic duty. This is religion. This is art that matters. The city pays for it. The best minds write it. And even if your back hurts, even if your stomach growls, even if the sun bakes the thoughts out of your skull, you're still here. Because everyone is. And to miss it would be worse than boredom. It would be absence. By the time it ends, you're not sure what hour it is. Your legs ache. Your throat is dry. Your ears ring with poetry and curses. Someone won. Someone died. Someone danced in a goat costume. Someone made a speech that shook the bones in your chest. And all of it happened in the open, under the sky, with thousands of people beside you, all blinking, yawning, scratching, and remembering. You rise slowly, feeling the imprint of stone in your thighs. The crowd pours down the steps like water. Someone hums a chorus verse under their breath. Someone else quotes a line and gets it wrong. And you walk home in silence, unsure whether you've been entertained or transformed. Maybe both, maybe neither. But you were there, and now the city knows it. You thought it would be simple. A man talking under a tree, a few wise words, some nodding, maybe applause. But instead, you find yourself sitting cross-legged in the dust, head tilted, mouth half open, trying to follow a question that refuses to end. The man speaking isn't dressed like anyone important. No jewelry, no title, no sandals, just a beard, a stare, and a voice like sandpaper over stone. He doesn't tell you what he believes. He just asks, and asks again, and again. What is justice? What is good? What is a friend? You answer once, proud, then again, less certain, then again, and you realize your own mouth has betrayed you. The question hasn't changed, only your faith in the answer. People gather slowly, drawn by the hum of uncertainty. You're not the only one sweating under the weight of invisible thoughts. The man calls himself nothing. He says he knows nothing, but he speaks like someone peeling the world apart with bare hands. Every example you give, he twists. Every truth you cling to, he smudges with doubt. Soon, even the shape of your own name feels flimsy. The others chuckle when you pause too long. Then they take your place and fall into the same trap. It's not cruelty. It's something worse. Honesty. The man isn't trying to win. He's trying to dig. And you, all of you, are the ground. Time blurs. You forget the sun. You forget errands, meals, your aching legs. All that remains is the rhythm of questions and the strange tightening in your chest every time he makes you look again. You thought the soul was simple. You thought being good meant acting good. You thought the gods handed down rules and that was the end of it. But now you're unsure whether you've ever truly known anything. The ground under your thoughts is soft, slippery, shaped by habit more than truth. You speak slower now. You listen harder. You catch yourself halfway through a sentence and ask, not aloud, but inside, is that true or just easy? Eventually the crowd thins. The man walks away, barefoot and smiling, as if he hasn't just pulled your mind out through your nose. You sit still, blinking at nothing, feeling the space inside you that wasn't there this morning. You won't sleep well tonight. You won't explain this to anyone. But the questions will stay. They always do. You'll carry them like stones in your tunic, reaching for them home when the world feels too clear. Because now you know. Philosophy isn't beauty or comfort or certainty. It's a wound, one you keep reopening just to feel something real. You're not asked what you want. You're told. First, in glances, then in whispers, then in loud conversations you're not part of, even though they're about you. You're around 13 or 14, old enough to carry water without spilling, old enough to know how to avoid stairs, old enough to bleed, which means you're old enough to be promised. You hear your father say your name in the same breath as another man's, a man you've never spoken to, a man twice your age or more, a man with goats or vineyards, or a father on the council. It doesn't matter if he's kind, or cruel, or boring. What matters is what he offers. What matters is that you become someone else's problem before you become your family's shame. The wedding isn't really yours. You're there, dressed in cloth that smells of oil and new dye, your hair twisted into something ceremonial. You're told to stand, to smile, to accept. Your name becomes quieter, your voice less useful. You move from one house to another, like furniture passed between rooms. In your new home, there's a room for sleeping, for bleeding, for bearing. You keep your eyes down. You speak only when spoken to. You try to be useful. You learn where the grain is kept, how the loom works, how to swallow silence. The other women, if there are any, don't ask how you feel. They already know, or they've forgotten. You copy their movements and pray that obedience is enough. No one talks about love. Not seriously. Not for you. Love is for plays, for poems, for men with time to waste on longing. You don't need longing. You need a son. That's the goal. The only one that matters. Not for your sake, but for lineage, for the name, for the gods. If you give birth to a girl, there are no celebrations. If you give birth to no one, there are whispers. If you die giving birth, well, that's life. The city doesn't mourn women who vanish into blood and dust. The city barely sees them at all. You stay indoors, behind shutters, behind courtyards, behind roles. And when your husband speaks of civic duty, of debates in the agora, of war and honor, you nod, not because you agree, but because there's no space for disagreement. And still, you exist. Not as a voice, but as a presence. You shape bread, patch tunics, brush lice from children's hair. You carry water in clay jars taller than your torso. You hear everything. Remember everything. You notice who limps, who lies, who drinks too much. But your knowledge isn't valued. Your experience isn't consulted. You are the root of the house, but never its face. When your daughter turns 12, you look at her and wonder if anyone will ask her what she wants. Then you remember they didn't ask you, and likely never will. You can't remember the last time your tunic smelled different. Not good, just different. The linen holds everything. Smoke from the hearth, oil from your skin, dust from the street, someone else's breath when you stood too close. You notice it only when you lie down, and it lifts with your body like steam rising from bread. Washing it sounds like a solution, but that means hauling it to the river, finding space between other bodies, and scrubbing it until your hands go raw. So you don't, or you wait, or you wear a different tunic that smells the same. The dirt becomes part of you. Your neighbors don't comment. Their clothes carry the same weight. When you do wash, it's not gentle. There's no soap, Not the kind you dream of. Just coarse ash, maybe sand, maybe crushed herbs if you can spare them. You dip the cloth, twist it, slam it against stone. Your knuckles swell. Your fingers sting. The fabric weeps brown. You kneel for so long your legs go numb, then stand and wring it dry until your shoulders cramp. If the river runs too fast, you lose your grip. If it runs too slow, the filth stays. You lay the wet tunic on a flat rock and pray the wind doesn't take it. The sun will bleach it. The wrinkles will stay. You'll carry it home still damp, still imperfect, but cleaner for now. But that's just clothes. There are blankets, towels, rags from the kitchen, the baby's wrap, stiff from use. You don't have time to wash them all. No one does. So you prioritize. The rest you hang outside just to let the air move through. It helps, a little, sometimes. Other times it just makes the smell travel further. The idea of clean becomes relative. Is it cleaner than yesterday? Is it clean enough not to itch? Good. Then wear it, fold it, sleep under it. There's no cedar chest, no scented drawer, just a hook on a wall, or a corner in a basket, or a space under your straw mat where mice don't reach. And even after all this, someone might ask why your clothes look so worn, why the edge is frayed, why the hem is uneven. They never ask who washes them, or how often. They assume the work just happens, quietly, without thought. But you remember every stone, every scrape, every stain that wouldn't lift. You remember the sting of river water in cold weather, and the bruises on your thighs from leaning over too long. You walk past people every day, neighbors, family, strangers, and think, I've touched the water that touched your skin, and you wonder if anyone else feels the same. Or if in this world, dirt is just something you live with until someone else notices. You don't own your name. You answer to whatever they call you, sometimes kindly, sometimes not. You sleep near the door, or on a pile of sacks, or in the corner of a courtyard, wherever you fit. You wake when the others do, or before, but never after. You speak only when spoken to. You carry things heavier than you, repeat tasks until your muscles forget they ever did anything else, and you do it all knowing no one will thank you. There are no wages, no holidays, no future to save for. You don't even dream, not because it's forbidden, but because you're too tired. And even if you did dream, what then? Freedom? That's a word for stories, not for people like you. You are sold like grain, weighed, priced, moved from one house to another with no warning. One day you grind flour. The next, you row a boat. The next, you serve wine at a table where no one looks at you unless you spill it. If you're lucky, your master is bored, not cruel. If you're unlucky, you carry the marks for days, sometimes inside your skin, sometimes across your back. There are rules, supposedly, laws about how you can be treated. But who enforces them? Who listens to a voice that doesn't count? If you run, you're hunted. If you speak out, you're silenced. If you die, there's no funeral. Maybe a shrug. Maybe just a new one to replace you. The others know. The free men. The women in the market. The children who throw stones when no one's watching. They all see you and then look away. You're not invisible. You're inconvenient. A walking reminder that freedom here is a thin wall, and on the other side of it is you. You work beside them, eat near them, live inches from them, and yet you might as well be clay. You're not a person. You're a tool, useful until broken. then replaced. There's no morning, just the next one, and the next, and the next. The city is full of you, and yet somehow it never truly sees you, but you still feel, you still remember. The smell of a fig tree from when you were small. The sound of your mother's voice before she was sold. The texture of your native tongue, rough now from disuse. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, scrubbing a floor, folding wool, holding your breath, you let those things back in. Not to hope, just to feel. To remember you once had a name you chose, a path that was yours, a body that belonged only to itself. Now, you survive. Not because you believe in tomorrow, but because today hasn't killed you yet. Every cough feels like a warning. Every cut could be the one that festers. Every ache you try to ignore might be something else entirely. You live close to death, not because you're reckless, but because it's always near. You drink water that's not always clean. You eat food that's not always fresh. You walk barefoot sometimes, or in sandals held together by hope, over streets where filth collects like memory. There's no soap, not really. No antiseptic, no antibiotics. You know people who died from fevers, from childbirth, from a swollen tooth. You know people who went to sleep after a hard day and never opened their eyes again. And nobody acts surprised. That's just how it goes. Illness isn't the only threat. There's war, always war. Sometimes official, sometimes not. You hear shouting in the street and you freeze. You see men with spears on the horizon and wonder if your house is next. Drafts come quickly, violently. Someone calls your name, hands you a helmet, and suddenly you're in formation, sweating into bronze, waiting to charge or to fall. You don't need to be a soldier to die like one. A loose stone, a collapsing wall, a jealous neighbor, a god's anger expressed through lightning or a failed harvest. The line between life and death is thinner than your belt rope, and you're reminded of that every time the sun sets and you're still breathing. People talk about the gods as if they're listening. Sometimes that comforts you. Sometimes it terrifies you. Because if they are listening, why do they let children die of heat stroke? Why do they let mothers waste away while feeding their families? Why does the temple priest survive the plague, but the old woman who gave you bread last winter doesn't? You bring offerings anyway. Burnt barley, a coin if you have one, a whisper no one hears. Not because you believe, but because it feels worse not to. You ask for protection and health, not riches, just enough time, just one more day. You don't dream of years. You never have. That's not for people like you. And yet, you go on. Not because life is good, not because you're strong, but because waking up still counts as a victory. You take care not to anger anyone. You step wide around fights. You nod when you want to scream. You carry on even when your chest tightens and your breath comes short. Everyone does. Because if you stop, if you rest, if you demand something better, that could be the day you don't get up again. There are no safety nets, no second chances. Only now. Only this. Only while the quiet promise you whisper to yourself each morning. I'm still here. You don't pray for blessings. Not really. You pray that the gods haven't noticed you yet. Or if they have, that they aren't angry. Most of your rituals aren't celebrations. They're apologies in advance. You light the fire just so, place the offering with both hands, whisper the words in the right order, hoping no one hears your voice shake. You don't expect gifts. You don't expect signs. You just want to get through the day without being struck by a thunderbolt, or losing a child, or waking up to smoke rising from your neighbor's house and wondering if you're next. Sometimes the priest tells you the gods are just, but that doesn't match what you've seen. You've seen bad men live long. You've seen kind women disappear. The gods don't explain. They just decide. The temple is beautiful from a distance. Up close, it's smoke and sweat and old blood. You wait your turn behind others with the same hollow look. Farmers, widows, men clutching sick children, women clutching cracked coins. You're not here to give thanks. You're here because you're scared. Something went wrong. A crop failed. A wound won't heal. A merchant cheated you. Maybe it's your fault. Maybe you forgot a festival. Maybe you stepped over a sacred line without knowing. So you bring what you can, oil, wine, a carved fig, and you place it down as carefully as you'd lay a baby in a cradle. You say nothing clever. You make no demands. You ask to be overlooked, forgotten, spared. At home, there's a smaller shrine, a dish with ashes, a rock shaped like nothing in particular, but sacred anyway. You light it in the morning, out of habit, out of fear. You offer a crust of bread before you eat. You glance upward when you pass a doorway. You don't know if it matters, but the one time you forgot, your cousin broke his leg, and no one could say why. That's how belief works here. Not through certainty, but through patterns. Coincidences that cling. Warnings passed down like recipes. You don't need proof. You've seen enough. A stillborn lamb, a withered vine, a scream in the night with no body found. You don't ask if it's real. You ask what it wants from you. You used to wonder what the gods looked like. Now you just hope they're busy with someone else. You picture them not as radiant beings, but as forces. Old, bored, easily offended. They have favorites, clearly, but you're not one of them. You're background noise, a name on a list they might someday circle. So you stay quiet. You stay respectful. You nod at the altar. You whisper apologies when you sneeze during a ceremony. You avoid stepping on cracks in the stones outside the temple, just in case. And when something bad happens anyway, you don't curse. You don't question. You just bow your head and say, I must have done something wrong. Because in this world, you always have. You lie down on something that used to be straw. It no longer smells like anything alive. The mat beneath you is too thin to soften the floor, but thick enough to keep in the heat. Your tunic clings to you, not from sweat anymore, but from the long day pressed into it. Your skin itches in 5 places you can't reach. Someone is already snoring nearby, loudly, in rhythm with a cough that won't stop. You turn on your side, but the air doesn't move. There's no breeze, no moonlight, no mercy. Just the dark and the sound of your own breath sticking in your throat like something unchewed. Your mind tries to let go, but it clings to things. A word you heard in the market, a look someone gave you at dusk, the way your foot slipped earlier on a patch of stone that wasn't wet. You didn't fall, but you might tomorrow. That thought loops, tightens, blurs. You shift again. The mat makes a dry sound like paper. Someone murmurs in their sleep. Someone else groans. You close your eyes harder, as if that will help. But the dark behind your eyelids is the same as the dark outside them. The same weight, the same warmth. You're not resting. You're waiting. There's no concept of comfort here. Only less discomfort, less noise, less itch, less hunger. You gave up the idea of waking refreshed a long time ago. Now you just want to wake up at all. Sleep comes in splinters, a few minutes maybe, then gone again with a creak or a breeze or a mosquito near your ear. Your body doesn't relax, it sags. The difference is small, but you notice. You always notice. Morning will come whether you sleep or not. The sun doesn't care. Neither do the gods. Neither does anyone, really. You're not important enough to deserve quiet, or dreams, or anything better than this. So you lie still. You breathe slow. You pretend that's sleep. You tell yourself not to count the hours, because you won't like the number. Somewhere while a dog barks. Somewhere a door slams. You hear it all, feel it all, and still, somehow, you stay put. You don't rise. You don't scream. You just let the night wrap around you like a rough wool blanket, scratchy and hot. You think maybe tomorrow will be easier, but you don't believe it. Not really. And so in the end, you don't fall asleep. You disappear, just enough to survive another day. You wouldn't last a day in ancient Greece. Not with the heat, not with the hunger, not with the rules that changed depending on your gender, your status, or your luck. Not with sandals made of string and streets lined with sharp stones. Not with gods who punished you for forgetting a festival, or neighbors who traded your freedom for a debt. Not with the weight of being poor, being watched, being replaceable. You'd break quietly, slowly, maybe even without noticing. And yet, they didn't. They woke up every morning to the same dust and did it all again. They buried their dead and still prayed. They marched to war and came home to plant figs. They wrote plays and cleaned fish. They built temples knowing they'd never be finished in their lifetime. They carved thoughts into stone and passed ideas from one tongue to another, even as the world around them cracked and shifted. They argued. They doubted. They endured. You sleep in a bed they never imagined. You drink water that never makes you sick. You know things they didn't, and you fear things they wouldn't understand. But tonight, for just a little while, you walked their streets. You lived in their skin. You felt the weight of the day as they did, dry, tired, and full of questions. So now rest. Not because you earned it, but because they rarely could.